Hi, I'm Erik Hall, the digital sports editor at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm joined by John Cherwa, who was APSE president in 2002-2003, while sports coordinator at the Tribune Company. Thanks for joining me, John.
It's great to be here.
How did you get involved with APSE?
You have to go back to the Santa Monica convention somewhere around the dawn of time when Bill Dwyer was the sports editor, just came in from Milwaukee, sports editor of the LA Times. I was the sports editor of the Orange County edition of the LA Times. And he suggested, hey, why don't you come out to Santa Monica and come to the convention? And I believe that was the one in which Jim Murray, I'm actually kind of sure that Jim Murray won the Red Smith Award, so it would have been the second Red Smith Award won. And I've been involved with that heavily while I was in the business full time since then. Although since I semi-retired about 5 years ago, and semi-retired means that I still work for the LA Times, but I'm not full time, and I live in Florida and not Los Angeles, and so I haven't really gone to as many APSE conferences until the Las Vegas one this past June.
How was that to be there at this year's conference to celebrate the 50th year of the organization?
Well, the organization has changed a lot. Of course, my favorite was getting to see all the founders, the old timers, the Dave Smith, the Bill Dwyers, the Henry Freeman, the George Solomons, and just people that I hadn't seen in a while who have sort of stepped away from APSE. I still am involved through the Legal Affairs Committee, and I actually vote all the votes that you get by emails as a member of the Executive Committee. And but seeing everyone there was really good. The conventions are certainly less than they used to be. They used to be these incredibly big affairs. I think, when you look back at my tenure at APSE, probably my most significant accomplishment was during 2000 when I was the convention host for the Chicago convention. And at the start of the dinner, I made what was a monumental decision to keep the bar open during the meeting, or during the dinner. And I do remember the Tribune. I was at the Chicago Tribune, sports at the Chicago Tribune at the time, and I remember that at the end we cut a check for $35,000, and that was for the closing banquet. Things have changed since then. Trying to get a newspaper to commit $35,000. Probably not that likely, but that was the good times of journalism. I was the president from 2002, 2003, which I look back at maybe the golden years, or maybe it was just the gilded years. I mean, who knows of APSE? And we accomplished a lot. We did a lot. We were a bigger organization, but less inclusive organization than we are now.
What do you mean by, what do you think has changed the inclusivity of the organization?
I think partly it was a form of desperation because newspapers are going by the wayside. I remember when I became an officer, and I was the last 4-year officer of APSE. What used to happen was when you were third vice president, you were in charge of the newsletter. And that meant you had to deal with a guy named Ken Finkel, who was just like the toughest guy ever. He was on your ass every day about, do you have the story? Do you have the story? And that's when we printed it. Unlike now where it's an online edition. When we have it, I know we don't have it as often as we used to. And then the second vice president, you moved up to second vice president, was you were in charge of the contest. And that, everybody knows what that's like, which is now the role of the first vice president. Then the first vice president was in charge of the convention. And I was actually in charge of our Dallas convention. And I take a small bit of pride in putting together a panel that was Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban, moderated by Bob Ryan. And that was pretty terrific. It was pretty terrific. And that might have been my highlight of the Dallas convention. And then when you were president, you just got to be president, which was kind of the easiest of the 4 years because you weren't really doing all that. But what we discovered was that we couldn't keep anybody for 4 years in APSE leadership because they were all, got better jobs. And that is basically a testament to the fact that I could never get a better job. So that's why I had to do 4 years. I remember the opening, I think, was created by one of my very best friends, Rick Jaffe, who left the LA Times to go to foxsports.com. Ooh, goodness gracious. We couldn't have an online person in APSE. That would just be wrong back in 2000. And well, as things have evolved, we have added online because we needed to. And basically, I don't know how much longer the print product's going to be around. I would like to think it would be in my lifetime, but I'm not at all certain. The print product could be gone every place by the end of this decade. I don't know. And then we've added students. We've added, Substacks. We've added a lot of different things to be more inclusive. The bottom line, though, is it's all about sports journalism. It's not about newspapers anymore. It's about sports journalism, and those who provide insight, information, commentary on the journalism that we hold so near and dear, then yeah, they ought to be members.
So can you tell me more about that panel you put together with Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, and Bob Ryan? How did that come about?
It was basically I think it was on the relationship of newspapers or the media, at that time newspapers, but the media and the big teams. And so it was a total almost crisis. Jerry Jones, I locked down right away, no problem, not just a piece of cake. And Mark Cuban, I thought I had him locked down, but he didn't think he was locked down. So we're there, and we're getting like 15 minutes to the start of the panel, or I don't know if 3 people's a panel, but if it is, we'll call it a panel. And Jerry's there in his coat and his tie, and being very Jerry Jones. And there's no Mark Cuban. There's no Mark Cuban to be found anywhere. So Bob Yates was the sports editor of the Dallas Morning News at the time, and he had a reporter at Dallas Mavericks practice. So he called his reporter and said, "Hey, what the hell Mark Cuban's supposed to be here." So, he talks to Cuban, and Cuban's got no recollection of the fact that he's supposed to be at this panel. None. And I'll take responsibility. You think you double check, you think you triple check, but sometimes that's not enough. And, but to his incredible, just who he is, he got in a car with the driver, whatever, and just sort of flew down to the hotel we were at in Dallas, showed up in his t-shirt. I don't remember if he was wearing long pants or shorts, and sat on the panel next to a coat and tie Jerry Jones and Bob Ryan of the Globe. And it was terrific. It was everything you would hope it would be, even though it started about 20 minutes late.
What are some other highlights of the conference, maybe that you put on there in Dallas or Chicago?
It's funny, the APSE conferences, and I've been involved in a few, were always last. I mean, you think you have everything nailed down, but it's always last minute. I remember in Chicago, we had done a favor for the National Thoroughbred Racing Association because they desperately wanted to get Wayne Lucas, or as he's known to everybody else, D. Wayne Lucas, on as one of the featured speakers. We did, and then like that day he canceled out. And Dan McGrath, who was my assistant in Chicago at the time, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And we got Ray Meyer from DePaul, just came down, and those are the kind of relationships that we had. But as you go through, all the conventions have their moments, and I can't say I know what the moment was from Las Vegas. I know for me, it was the President's Dinner. which one day hopefully you'll be at a president's dinner, was just terrific. But I remember when was in Orlando, when I was a Tribune sports coordinator, I was in Orlando, which actually happens to be my hometown and where I live now. And which meant when I went back to the LA Times, it was not a fun commute for 8 years. I was commuting between Orlando and Los Angeles. We hosted the convention, Orlando hosted the convention, and we had Red Smith Award winner, former president, legend of APSE, Van McKenzie, was the AMA Sports at that time. And he decided he wanted to put on a carnival. Only Van could think of that. So we put on a full-ass carnival and I can remember Lynn Hoppus, who I know you've interviewed, him and I are out like ordering these stuffed animals and all the other crap that goes in a carnival. And except of course, the one thing and anybody who knew Van was loved to be a gambler. He loved so many things, but he loved his grandkids. And so he fixed every contest so that his grandkids would win like a big ass stuffed lion or whatever it was which nobody could carry home in their luggage anyway. So, it only made sense. But that was, and I think we had like a UCF small band, it was a Disney band, like walking everybody into the hallway of the hotel, which was supposed to be at the JW Marriott. And I think that's where the events were. But we booked the hotel before the place was built. And relatively speaking, we're a small convention compared to, some of the others. And they came and said, we hate to do this to you, but can we move you to our adjacent property? And when I mean adjacent, we're talking about the same parking lot, adjacent property. And we're saying, what's that? They said, well, it's the Ritz-Carlton. Oh, yeah, we're good with that. Yeah, we're good with that. So all of us moved to the Ritz-Carlton, the last time that APSE will ever be at a Ritz-Carlton, so that some bigger convention could stay at the JW. But I think we still use their convention space or something like that.
Those are some great memories. I can tell. How did you become president of APSE?
Nobody else wanted the job. The truth is, there were 2 spots open because Rick Jaffe had left to go to foxsports.com. And so there was a 3rd and 4th vice president. And Don Skwar of the Boston Globe, a very good friend of mine, and I were like the only 2 people put up for election. Don got more votes than I did, so he got to be 2nd vice president. I had to be 3rd vice president, so that's why I get to serve the 4 years instead of the 3. But I think the one thing that Don and I really collaborated on, and it's something that I think has been very important to APSE. I hope it's been very important to APSE. Has been we started the Legal Affairs Committee. And I think it started under my tenure in 2002, and I named Don Skwar the chair. And then after I left being president, then Don and I were the co-chairs for a while until Don left the Boston Globe and went to ESPN. And then I was the lone chair for, probably more than a decade until Gerry Ahern came along to help me, and or for me to help him, whatever. I mean, we're a great team. And we fought some of the biggest battles that I look back on and think, wow. I mean, I spent a ton of my time fighting for things for us in every major sports organization, NFL, MLB. I can remember sitting, face to face with, at that time, Paul Tagliabue, later Roger Goodell, Bud Selig, in MLB, and Stern and Silver. And we really fought the battles hard to get the kind of access that we thought we deserved. And we fought over a lot of stuff. And I know I saw just recently I think you did a thing with Mike Fannin, talked about the battle with the NFL. And I was there front and center. And I became sort of this lawyer without credentials, without being a lawyer. So much so that I did so much on this issue that I actually spoke at a couple of legal conferences about about the relationship between sports organizations and the people who cover them. And just to do a very quick primer, is any journalist who says, "Oh, First Amendment, freedom of press, First Amendment," that's just total crap. That doesn't fly, because the strongest legal form is contract law, and contract law is when you sign the credential form. It trumps constitutional law. It trumps everything else, because you agree to follow these rules. And those were the things we fought. We fought over online video. And today Gerry and I are still on the Legal Affairs Committee. I don't know if we're going to be reappointed, or if we're going to go, part of the dodo bird or whatever. I don't know. But things have changed a lot. We're not very busy at all, because with the advent of online and the pandemic, the people that we cover don't, and this might be hyperbole, don't really want us there, because they can produce their own message, and they would rather have their message than our message. They would rather control all of that, and they can do that. And fans are not so discerning that they don't know that they're okay, going to Lakers.com or whatever.com, but there is still, but the discerning fan knows that the independent press, the independent news organization, is really the best one to look for. One of the things I still do for the LA Times is I cover horse racing. And every year I cover the Kentucky Derby, or at least for the last, 8-10 years or whatever. And I can say without equivocation, they do not want us there, especially if we write about horse deaths. They do not want us there. And I believe this coming year, they're going to move us from we don't have a view of the track. No, we're in a bunker. And then now I think they're going to move us from the front stretch to the back stretch, because they just keep selling all the spots that used to be held for the media. So this is sort of the battle right now. It's totally a losing battle, because they really don't want us there. I know that sounds terrible, and maybe a little cynical, but I've been accused of being cynical before.
It sounds like that role has been something you've enjoyed, working with APSE and fighting for access. What is the most rewarding thing you found from that role?
It's the fact that we usually win, and we win by being reasonable. And one of the things that I always like to caution people when they get into these fights, and sometimes before APSE gets involved, is that I really feel strongly that you have to leave an out for the people you are up against. I would rather keep every one of our fights below the radar, out of the news, out of all that, because when it escalates and you have a discernible winner and loser, then you have a discernible loser. And you don't want either, and you don't want the people that you are trying to get access for to be considered a loser. I'm perfectly okay with them announcing, yes, we've decided to allow 90 seconds of online video, or we've decided that we're going to move the press. We're going to still have courtside seating at the NCAA tournament. The NCAA tournament's okay, but some of the regional tournaments run by college teams, they'd love to put us in the upstairs press box, where we have no quick, easy access down to the floor, down to the locker room to talk to people. And those are the kind of things that we're fighting now. And but the things that I guess I love every victory, and I love every victory that nobody knows about, that doesn't bubble up, does not create a big scene. I mean, I can remember being on the phone with now all past presidents, be it Fannin, being it Gerry Howard, being it whomever, I remember with Gerry, it was like we were talking to Bud Selig in Japan, and we got Bud to relent on something. I don't even remember what it was, but to just say, hey, we're important, we count, we matter. And, again, if there's ever a footnote to my involvement in APSE, I think it might be through the things that we've done through the Legal Affairs Committee.
Was there any particular issue going on when you created the committee that led to the committee's creation, or is it just something you more saw coming?
It started with access and then turned into online rights. It just, I mean, hey, I'm old enough to remember where, it might be an issue to get a woman in the locker room. Certainly not the case anymore. But, it started out just on access, whether it's how much time, you get to be, you get to talk to the athletes. I remember when I was, again, the sports of the Chicago Tribune, we had, I was there for 3 of Michael Jordan's 6 championships. And darned if I don't remember that, Michael ran the media in the fact that he would always make sure that there were 1 or 2 prominent name players that were available to the media before each game, because sometimes now even more so than ever, you have to write your pregame story and plug in the score. Back then, not so much, but certainly the way it is today. And then afterwards, Michael was always available, and Michael would stay until the last question by some dumbass radio reporter was answered. And who else was that way? It was Wayne Gretzky. When I was in my first tour through Los Angeles, Gretzky was there, and he would stay and answer every little lame question until there were no more questions. That doesn't happen today. But I think those were the early issues, and then it all became online rights because everybody thought, oh, there's all this money in online. Well, I guess we kind of learned that there's not that much money in online. You have to be in that space, and you're the online editor for the Post-Dispatch, so that as well as any. I mean, do you have problems with your local teams, or are they pretty much open to whatever you want to do?
It depends on the team. The Cardinals are different from the Blues, and even more so, Blues are different from the MLS team. So it kind of depends on the stature of the team and their ability to reach people without us, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's a part of it. It's funny, I don't think I've ever really had a problem with a hockey team. I just don't remember having a problem with a hockey team. Baseball teams, your problems with baseball teams are more in the interpersonal relationships between the media and the athletes, because as a generalization, baseball players do not spend a lot of time in college, and it's a 6-day-a-week to 7-day-a-week sport. And they're basically just like popping towels in the showers, just acting like kids up into their 30s and whatever. And they still have that sense. Football players, I find pretty much okay to deal with because they only have to deal with the media maybe 2-3 times a week, as opposed to 6 and 7 times a week that others do. NBA, so, someone asked me the other day who I thought the best commissioner or what the best run league was in pro sports. And I said the NBA. I have a lot of respect for Adam Silver. And you know what? When you think about it, Eric, how many commissioners could we get to speak to our convention in Las Vegas? Not a huge convention. We're talking probably less than 100 or whatever people. Adam Silver came and talked, and he answered our questions, and he did all of that. So MLS is sort of funny. They sometimes are prickly, sometimes not, but it's almost always a local issue, not an issue with the big league, with the MLS. It's just like a local. I can remember a few years back we were in battle with Salt Lake City team, probably an FC something or other. I don't follow the MLS, it came down to they wanting to ban a reporter who wrote stuff that they didn't like. Well, we got that taken care of, so that's good.
Yeah. You were talking about being at the Tribune during the last three of Jordan's titles. I was growing up in Illinois, and I want to say those were incredible sections you were putting out at that time at the Chicago Tribune. I'm sure I've got copies of some of those bigger ones stowed away in basement or something somewhere.
Well, if you were to look up the definition of wretched excess, there would be copies of my Chicago Tribune sports sections where we would do during the NBA Finals 7 or 8 open pages. I would travel 12 people, which is equivalent to the number of players that the Bulls had. Now, we also had deadlines that allowed us to do that. But of course, you've got a couple of columnists. I would always take one person that would just do the city, like the city of Salt Lake, the city of Seattle, and actually wouldn't cover the game, but would give you some slice of life stuff. And then, then you get your gamer. I mean, I look back at that as just basically kind of stupid, but it's what I thought was necessary at the time. Here's was my explanation for it: is you go to a buffet and you've got all these things to choose from. You are not expected to eat each and every one of the food that's laid out for you. But whatever food you want, you can pick and you can choose and you can eat it. And that's the kind of sports section that I tried to create during the Bulls runs, which was we're going to give you everything. You're not expected to read it all, but hopefully whatever you're looking for, you're going to be able to find. Today, with entire newspapers being in the 30-page range or maybe less, that just seems so ridiculous. But in the 1990s, that was the way it was. And just sort of to sidelight on that, my first Bulls season was when they set the record for most number of wins. And when they tied the record, it happened to be like the one game that wasn't on local TV. So we're going up 7 pages. We're going up 7 pages. I know you have to go up in multiples of even numbers, but basically it was, I do know that. But, I remember I had 7 pages devoted to the Bulls. And we had no idea if they were going to win or not. So I had to have like 6 pages of crap, of filler stuff that we went in. And the boss at the time said, if they don't win tonight, you're not getting those pages back again. This is it. You're done. So I've got like one of my assistants over, and this is when we were at Trib Tower on Michigan Avenue, with a radio with an antenna hanging out almost out the window so we could pick up the signal, because you couldn't pick up the signal inside the building. And needless to say, I think they were playing the Milwaukee Bucks, and they won. And we had, I think that was the 72nd win. You can help me on that, but don't hold me to that. But I think it's somewhere in that range.
I think they finished with 72, but I think they broke the record. When they broke the record, it was 70.
70. I think you're probably right.
And they finished with 72 wins.
Yeah, I think you're right. See, you should have been sports editor back then if you were old enough. But
I was in high school around then, so yeah. What has APSE meant to you professionally during your career?
I think most of all, it's been the friendships that you make. I know that's kind of trite, but it's the people that you get to know. I got to say that we were at the newcomers reception. And to see Dave Smith walk across the room and stick out, "Hey, John, how you been doing?" And Dave and I didn't interact a lot. But to think of that, someone of the stature of Dave Smith actually remembered who I was really pretty great. And that night, we had sort of a Times alumni dinner with some of the former Times people, including Bill Dwyer and Tracy Dodds and Ileana Limon Romero, who's the current sports editor, Rick Jaffe, who I mentioned before, and Dave Morgan, who was head of Yahoo Sports and USA Today Sports and other things. And just to sit around and tell those kind of stories. I think that APSE has really gone through some fights through the years. I kind of wonder for the newcomers nowadays, the fights don't seem as intense. They don't seem as extreme. because our world is so different. It's contracting, it's changing, the needs are different, but being a member, I'm proud to be a member of APSE. I'm proud to be a past president. It's why I still vote on all the, whether we allow this website or that website in, and I usually vote yes, or this student chapter and whatever, is we help shape the conversation for, again, I used it earlier, the golden years of newspapering, back when newspapers were printing money. I mean, literally, we were printing money. And the fact that we did all that is pretty remarkable. And now the challenge for you and the people coming up is how to sustain it. And I'm sure you will, just as George Solomon and others said, we've got confidence in you guys. We get you this far. Now it's up to you to take us over the finish line.
What advice would you have for future presidents of APSE?
I think you need to think 2 steps ahead, is not think so much in the now, but think in the 3 years future. Because if you can, I mean, we have no idea what communications are going to be like in 3 years, in 2 years, in 1 year, the way things change. I mean, who would have thought that right now we are renaming Twitter X? One of the most recognizable brands in communications is changing its name, which just gets to the stupidity of Elon Musk. Even though he's a great engineer, but he's an idiot running a company. These sorts of things, to think ahead, and to try to grow from the bottom up. I don't know if we do I think students are somewhat intimidated to get into that setting. I was actually doing a web search earlier, and I don't even remember this convention, but there's one where a foundation paid for like 40 students to go. And I think those are the good things. And I think we need to tap into the grants. There's a lot of free money out there, that people just want to give away because it's tax incentive for them, but it's good. It can be good for us. And we need to keep, fighting the fight for as long as we can. Don't think about the print product. The print product is not going to be there. I subscribe. I do not get a print newspaper. I get the Los Angeles Times, the Orlando Sentinel, the LA Times, the Washington Post, the New York Times. Those, I get 5 digital subscriptions, and that's what I get. I don't get the Athletic, but I guess maybe I should. I don't know.
I think you get the Athletic included with your New York Times subscription. So
that's what I heard, but I haven't seen it yet. But then again, that whole thing is going to transition over the next several months, I think, before we see that. The funny thing is I don't watch as much sports as you might think. I've been doing this. I'm 67. I've been doing this since I was 17 years old. That's a lot of years. And do I watch regular season games? The only thing I do love college football and pro football. So I will watch those during the regular season, but a Dodger game or a Laker game, and these are games that I kind of need to watch because another thing I do for the Times is I do their books and magazines. When you have like winning teams, I have to assemble, come up with a plan and assemble it all. And I tend to get interested like the last 2 weeks of the season and, see where we go from there. Oh, told you my dog would sound off.
You mentioned it briefly. What are you doing now?
I'm semi-retired. I live in Florida. I work for the LA Times. I do their horse racing. I consulted on Olympics, although I did their last 2. I did Tokyo and Beijing. I do the books and magazines as they come up. And I do Florida stories as they need to. And I also work part-time not very often, for the Baltimore Banner. Their editor, which is sort of a ProPublica thing, but their editor used to be one of my editors in Los Angeles. And when they started having horses dying, she said, "Hey, can you help out?" And so, yeah, I can help out because sadly, I'm probably one of the country's journalists leading experts on the death of horses based on what happened at Santa Anita in 2019. And it's not a job I wanted or asked for, but I tend to know more than most journalists on that.
Well, thanks so much for your time, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks to you for putting this oral history together of trying to get, well, I don't know how many are left, let's say 35 living sports editors to talk about their years. And, we didn't talk a lot about 2002, 2003, because it was kind of an uneventful year. I mean, all the other things sort of came around it, but there were no, like major crises that time. And it was a great year to be president, because there was no, catastrophe that I had to deal with. But thanks to you for putting together this oral history that hopefully people will enjoy listening to and watching.
Thanks, John.
Take care.